Amazon. It's about $3 or something. It's an old book. It's been out for 20 years. It's called Rescue Mission Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21. Yeah. Who's it by? The Children of the World. I'm sure they're getting their royalties. And Boutros Boutros-Ghali, former Secretary General of the United Nations. In here, it's really great. It's all these ways that children are upset because the planet's being destroyed. And there's this one place in here, it says, the planet groans every time it registers another birth. Okay, so let me just tell you, there's this little workbook in the back. It says, turning Agenda 21 into action is a big challenge for us all. Thousands of people at the United Nations and in governments are working on it. This booklet will show parents and educators how children can start to be a part of this work. Children are being used and indoctrinated through outcome-based education, where they're being trained. They're being trained to be global citizens. So here's the deal. The idea is that you, living out here in the rural and suburban areas of our nation, that you and your life are just unsustainable because you produce too many greenhouse gas emissions. So, you're living in that evil sprawl. It costs too much to get public transportation out to you. So, the idea is to move you into dense city centers and off of the land. Now, how are they doing it? They're using a group called ICLEI, the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. Except they don't call it ICLEI anymore. Now they call it Local Governments for Sustainability, because people are becoming aware about this group, and they wanted to make it seem like we're not really international, and we're not really, our headquarters aren't really in Bonn, Germany. They're really in Oakland, California. That's what they say. So, it is a non-governmental organization. It's created to implement Agenda 21 worldwide. It was created in 1990 with the sole purpose to implement Agenda 21 worldwide. They say they represent over 600 million people in 80 countries, and it's very likely that you have never heard of them. It's a non-governmental group made up of elected officials. Isn't that interesting? Now, I know you have open meeting laws in New York. I'm hoping that you do. And that means that when your government wants to have a meeting, they have to post it so you know it's happening, so you can go and you can walk in. It's an open public building and you can attend the meeting. But ICLEI is a non-governmental organization. So you do not get to go to their meetings. You do not find out what they're doing. And there are elected officials sitting on their board. Now, I happen to be from Sonoma County, California. One of my county supervisors, Valerie Brown, is on the national board of ICLEI. Never mentions it to anyone. She just gave an $83,000 no-bid contract to ICLEI, because what they do is they monitor your greenhouse gas emissions for a fee. Well, I reported her to the California Fair Political Practices Commission for conflict of interest, and they declined to investigate. So here you go. You've got this group that is designed to implement Agenda 21 locally by monitoring and metering and inventorying your greenhouse gas emissions, and then assisting your government in helping you to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I want to say right out, first thing, what am I, some kind of a pig who throws pop bottles out the window of my car? No. Of course, all of us want, we want to have a clean environment. We respect the land. You love the land, that's why you're out here. We want to conserve. My partner is a general contractor. She built a 2-story house out of recycled materials. I don't think, I hardly ever buy anything new. This is not about conservation and the environment. That is the green mask. This plan, if it didn't sound so good, there wouldn't be so many people who were going for it. This is a manipulation. So, ICLEI It's a policy and legislation arm of Agenda 21. There's 33 cities and 4 counties in New York that are members of ICLEI. I'm going to tell you some of the ones that are just nearby: Albany, Cooperstown, Saratoga Springs, Woodstock. And I know New York City's not right by here, but New York City. Because I want to tell you about New York City, just because New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles are all members. The majority of the people in the United States are in ICLEI cities. Think about that, the city. They want to move people into the city centers where they can be more easily monitored, surveilled, and controlled. So, when Obama was running for office the last time, he committed the United States to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. 2050 is kind of the deadline date for all of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. So, think about this for a minute. Reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. It seems like an awful lot, right? So I said, what year were we producing 80% of 1990 levels, greenhouse gas? What year was that, the United States? So I got a chart. It's in my book. I got a chart. Okay, 1990, take 80% off of that. What year is that? What year do you think? 1934. Now that was a stellar year for the United States. 1934, we weren't producing much of anything. Fabulous year, wasn't it? But depths of the Depression, 1934. But think about this. We have more people now than we did in 1934. So if you're talking about a per capita reduction, we're back in the 1880s, kind of, with our horse and buggy, except got too many greenhouse gas emissions there, so I don't know what we're going to be. Bicycles, I guess. So, okay, this is it. This is communitarianism. This is the end justifies the means. That is the plan. Whatever it takes. And it uses the mask of environmentalism. Now, there's something else you should know about, and that's the Kyoto Treaty. We didn't, the United States did not ratify the Kyoto Treaty, right? But that did not stop 1,055 United States mayors who did basically sign on. They didn't sign that treaty because they can't, but they agreed to implement Kyoto in their town. Well, what is it? Anti-sprawl, that's where you live. Smart growth, that's where they want you. High-density urban development. And carbon trading. Who signed on to that? 47 cities in New York. 47 cities in New York. I'm not going to read them. You're welcome to check this out. It's the Mayor's Climate Protection Center. Go and take a look, and you'll see. So another thing that ICLEI did was they put out a book. It's called Local Agenda 21. An introduction. Oh, it's the Local Agenda 21 Planning Guide. It's an introduction to sustainable development planning. And you'll find this in your planning department. Now, in this book, this is obviously just the cover of the book. It's also heavy. What you'll find in here is how to run a visioning meeting, among other things. How to bring people to a predetermined outcome while giving them the impression that it was all their idea. And let me just tell you a little something else about those meetings. It's very unlikely that you're actually going to be in those meetings, because they have pre-meetings, obviously, with the stakeholders. Now, you're not a stakeholder. I'd be very surprised if any of you are, or a real stakeholder. Now, of course, don't tell me about what a stakeholder really means from, historically. I know that they're using the term wrong. A stakeholder was a person who had no dog in the fight and would just hold the stake while the other guys fought. But no, they're talking now, stakeholder has just morphed into somebody who has some involvement in whatever the plan is. These are non-profit groups, governments, government agencies, elected officials, and insiders, cronies. That's who gets to go. Now, when you get to these visioning meetings, if you do find out about them, or sometimes they'll really make an effort to bring you in. You know, a little note in the bottom of the first page of your newspaper, something like that, and you go down there. You'll find that people who are voting, people who are giving their opinion on these plans, are people who should not be. The consultant who made the plan has got their clicker there, voting. Elected officials, they say, well, why can't I vote? I live here, don't I? And consultants, nonprofits, and other groups who have an interest, a financial interest, a power interest. Okay, so what's the goal? As I call it, they're using the greenhouse gas mask of environmental concern, and they're imposing the two elements of Agenda 21. That is smart growth, moving populations into concentrated city centers and restricting mobility. And the other part, restricting mobility. And the other part, I will talk about this. I will stay here all night and take all your questions, but I'm not going to do it until the end. So, wildlands is the other part of the plan, and that is getting people out of rural areas, blocking access to wilderness roads and resources, and shifting land ownership from private to public. That is a goal, shifting private land ownership to public ownership. So how are they doing it? As I said, by 2002, and that was when I started to realize there was a planning revolution going on. I didn't know about Growing Smart legislative guidebook. I was a government appraiser doing complex valuation, wanting to compensate people fairly for their property when it was needed for a roadway project. And I was going into planning departments all over the 9 counties of the San Francisco Bay Area and being told that basically there was nothing that anyone could do with their property by right, that you could not develop your property by right, that you were restricted, that, that someone couldn't just go in there and get a permit to build a house on their property. And then I realized that it wasn't just in the San Francisco Bay Area, that in fact the planning departments were the gatekeepers to development and to use of private property. Now the way that it's happening, in New York, you've got 13 metropolitan planning organizations. And they're called regional planning councils or regional planning and development boards. Money, federal money and state money for projects goes through these boards. These are unelected regional boards. They may be made up of elected officials, but you cannot vote on that board. Now you can, you got your council sitting there. Every couple years, half the council or a third, whatever, the people are up for election, and you can vote them out, right? This is different. This is a regional board. It's made up of one person or a couple people from each area of the representative region, and you can vote so the guy can lose his position. You can say, well, he's no longer on our council. Well, they'll just get someone else from your council. And in fact, you will find that the regional board can actually choose who they want off of your council. Where let's say your council gets together and they say, we want so-and-so. Let's say you have a majority liberal council. Let's just say that. They say, okay, we want Joe to serve on the regional board. The regional board says, we like Bill better. Bill gets on the board. The regional council has power. They have financial power, and you will often never even know they exist. You don't know where they meet. You don't know what they do. You may never have heard of them. These are all across the United States, metropolitan planning organizations. So the money directed through these regional boards is now the first time you're seeing transportation dollars, transportation tax dollars being used for housing, being used to develop housing. It's actually your transportation tax dollars being used to subsidize high-density housing. So what's smart growth? Smart growth is, check this out.